I destroyed my boss's career, not out of revenge, but because he tried to ruin mine first. Welcome to Trust and Treason Files, where we expose the raw truth behind the masks people wear. My name is Samuel Hayes. I am 42 years old. I never thought a job could become a battlefield, but some people make it personal. Some people make it about control, not work. And when I got hired at Westbrook Industries, I didn't realize I had walked straight into one of those people's path. At first, everything seemed normal. My boss, Richard Connors, was charming and persuasive. He praised my work, gave me opportunities, and made me feel like part of a team. I had spent years climbing slowly, and this promotion felt like finally stepping into a place I deserved. But the cracks appeared almost immediately. Meetings where my ideas were credited to others. Emails edited to make my suggestions seem weak. Offhand comments in the hallway designed to make me look incompetent. I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was imagining it. Then the warning signs became impossible to ignore. Richard began manipulating my schedule, setting me up for impossible deadlines, and subtly undermining my reputation with clients. He even suggested I should be grateful for the mistakes he publicly corrected, framing them as learning moments when, in reality, he was setting traps. The first real betrayal happened during a major project. Months of late nights, strategy meetings, and client calls, all my work, were presented by him in a board meeting as team effort, with subtle digs at my performance sprinkled in. I left that room humiliated, realizing the man I trusted was orchestrating my downfall. I tried confrontation at first. Calm, professional emails. Attempts to clarify misunderstandings. But every move I made was twisted against me. It became clear this wasn't about work anymore. It was personal. He wanted me out, and he wanted to make sure everyone knew I was incapable. The tipping point came when I discovered he had been leaking sensitive information from my files to a competitor. The betrayal was complete, calculated, and intended to destroy me. That's when I stopped playing by the rules. I didn't act out of anger. I acted out of strategy. I collected evidence, documented everything, and waited. Patience became my weapon. Silence became my armor. And in the quiet, I began planning a move that would expose him without ever needing to stoop to his level. Because sometimes justice doesn't come from fighting fire with fire. It comes from outsmarting the person who started it. This is the story of how I did exactly that. After I realized Richard's betrayal, I stopped reacting openly. I stayed at work, smiled in meetings, and nodded at his instructions. Outwardly, I was the dependable employee everyone thought I was. Inside, I was calculating. Every slight, every manipulation, every back-ended comment was stored, logged, and analyzed. I spent hours outside of work going through emails, project files, and meeting notes. Anything that could prove what he was doing. At first, it felt obsessive. At first, I questioned myself. Was I overreacting? But the pattern became undeniable. Every mistake I was blamed for, every client complaint, every misattributed idea traced back to Richard's subtle interference. Meanwhile, the isolation grew. I realized very few colleagues were trustworthy. Some were too afraid to speak up. Others were unwittingly part of his schemes. I could no longer confide in anyone at the office. The loneliness was suffocating. Even friends outside work struggled to understand the emotional toll because it was invisible. There was no shouting, no drama, just the quiet, relentless undermining of my professional life. My nights became spent piecing together the truth. Hours of documentation, cross-referencing emails, screenshots, hidden patterns. It wasn't exciting, but it was necessary. Every small piece of evidence became a brick in the foundation of my eventual strategy. Richard didn't suspect anything. He continued to act as if he had the upper hand, smug in his belief that I would never confront him. He gave interviews taking credit for my work, praised himself in company memos, and subtly insinuated I was unreliable. His confidence made him careless. The psychological grind was brutal. I questioned myself constantly. Was I overreacting? Was I too emotional? But every time doubt crept in, I revisited the evidence. The facts didn't lie. He had tried to ruin me, and the silence I endured was part of my plan. I also had to navigate office politics carefully. Any misstep could give him the chance to justify firing me or escalating his smear campaign. I had to endure quietly while projecting calm competence. It was exhausting, but it taught me something important. Patience was power. Outside of work, I focused on myself, my hobbies, my relationships, my mental clarity. I couldn't afford to lose sight of my own life while orchestrating justice. Every moment of quiet endurance sharpened my mind, preparing me for the reveal that was coming. Eventually, small cracks began to appear. Colleagues noticed inconsistencies in Richard's claims. Emails were forwarded to HR. Questions were raised about decisions he had made without oversight. I didn't intervene yet. I let the truth surface naturally, like a tide gradually exposing a hidden shore. I knew that when the time came, I would have every piece of the puzzle in my hands. And I would strike, not with anger, but with undeniable proof. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't chaos, it's clarity. I was about to unleash it. The moment of truth began quietly, without fanfare. It started with a single email to HR, carefully worded and backed by the months of documentation I had meticulously collected. Screenshots, emails, meeting notes, evidence of misattributed work, and proof of confidential information being leaked, all laid out in chronological order. I didn't copy anyone else. I didn't make a scene. I just sent it. Then I waited. The next few days were tense. I watched Richard as he strutted around the office, unaware that the walls he had built around his control were starting to crumble. Colleagues began noticing things. Questions were asked, subtle, cautious questions. Why wasn't I included in this decision? I thought this project was handled differently. The cracks grew wider, and he didn't see them coming. HR called me in for a meeting. They were professional, neutral, and thorough. They asked questions, reviewed evidence, and confirmed inconsistencies I had highlighted. At no point did I need to embellish. The facts spoke for themselves. Richard noticed the change immediately. He tried to play it off in front of others, but the nervousness was visible. The confidence that had allowed him to manipulate everyone around him began to falter. Whispers started circulating. People who had once feared him now began questioning him. Then came the meeting with senior management. I was present, not to accuse, but to clarify. Step by step, I laid out the timeline, showing exactly how decisions had been manipulated and how my work had been sabotaged. The room was silent. For once, my voice carried weight, and the power was finally mine. Richard tried to argue, to redirect blame, but the evidence was overwhelming. Every attempt to deflect was met with documentation, emails, and witness statements. For the first time, he faced scrutiny instead of control. By the end of the week, the consequences were unavoidable. HR recommended disciplinary action, and senior management took immediate steps to remove him from projects and client accounts. His reputation, carefully cultivated over years of manipulation, began unraveling in real time. It wasn't a public humiliation. There were no shouting matches, no dramatic confrontations. It was justice executed with precision. The same methodical care he had used to undermine me became his undoing. And in the quiet aftermath, I felt something I hadn't expected, a sense of peace. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt validated. The psychological weight of months of manipulation lifted because the truth was now undeniable. Richard eventually resigned under pressure. I never gloatingly announced it. I didn't need to. The message had already been sent. Actions have consequences, and entitlement does not protect the deceitful. The reveal wasn't about satisfaction. It was about reclaiming control of my life and proving quietly and decisively that I would not be a victim any longer. For the first time in months, I could breathe again. The battle was over, but the lessons remained. Patience, clarity, and strategic action were more powerful than anger. And for anyone listening, the truth has a way of finding its path, sometimes slowly, sometimes quietly, but always eventually. After the reveal, the office felt different. The tension that had weighed on me for months lifted, replaced by a quiet calm I hadn't experienced in years. Richard was gone from critical projects, and his influence had evaporated. Colleagues who had once feared him now treated me with respect, not because I had fought loudly, but because I had proven my integrity and patience. I didn't celebrate publicly. There was no gloating. The satisfaction came from knowing the truth had been set right. The system worked, not through chaos, but through clarity and preparation. With Richard removed, I could finally focus on my career without constant sabotage. Projects moved forward smoothly, and my contributions were finally recognized fairly. Opportunities one had been denied were now available. The confidence I regained wasn't just about professional success. It was about reclaiming my life. The experience changed me personally, too. I learned the importance of boundaries and vigilance. Trust is precious, and it should never be given blindly. The psychological grind, the silent endurance, and the meticulous planning had taught me resilience in a way nothing else could. I also realized the importance of patience. Revenge isn't about impulsive retaliation. It's about strategic action. I didn't destroy Richard out of anger. I dismantled his power by following the facts, documenting evidence, and letting truth speak louder than emotion ever could. That approach not only protected me, but ensured the consequences were permanent. Emotionally, I grew stronger. I understood my limits, my worth, and my right to be respected. I no longer allowed manipulation to define my life. Each day, I reinforced boundaries and safeguarded my career and personal life. I became more confident, more focused, and more in control. For anyone listening, here's what I want you to take away. Observe patterns. Manipulation is rarely accidental. Document evidence. Facts are more powerful than anger. Set boundaries. Silence can be a strategy, but clarity is the weapon. Protect your dignity. Justice is most effective when it is executed calmly and deliberately. Richard's career was ruined, not because I acted out of spite, but because he created a system of deceit that eventually collapsed under scrutiny. And I survived it stronger, wiser, and more aware than ever. Sometimes, the most satisfying victory isn't public recognition. It's the quiet knowledge that you refuse to be broken, and that justice found its way in the end. If you believe in justice, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. New files open daily.